In just a few hours, the suspect in the leak of classified Pentagon documents will appear in federal court in Boston for a detention hearing. 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira is charged under the Espionage Act with unauthorized retention and transmission of national defense information and also unauthorized removal of classified information and defense materials. Those leaked documents have exposed so much. They exposed a blunt U.S. assessment of the war in Ukraine, as well as details on U.S. intelligence collection on allies. They also revealed advancements that we've just learned about in the Washington Post today, serious advancements in Chinese spying military operations, including, according to the Post, that the Chinese military could soon deploy a high-altitude spy drone that travels at least 3 times the speed of sound. Let's talk about this hearing and what questions he has with Senator Angus King of Maine. He serves on the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. He and other senators will receive a classified briefing on these leaked documents today. Well, Senator, good morning. I bet you have a whole lot of questions, and I wonder what the top ones are.
Well, first, with 2 disclaimers. One is I haven't yet had any classified briefings on this, so I'm not talking about anything that's not in the public domain. Secondly, this young man has been charged. He hasn't been found guilty, so we got to be careful about assuming guilt. However, having said that, my principal question is, how in the world did a 21-year-old National Guardsman have access to this level of top secret information? One of the classifications is called TSSCI. That's just about the highest classification. TS stands for top secret, SCI, secure compartmented information. That means there are people, for example, in the CIA that can't even see it. You're only supposed to be able to see that information if you have a need to know it in some operational sense. So there's no way to sugarcoat it. This is a really serious breach, and it also shows a serious gap in the structure of our intelligence organization.
Do you think that an incident like this, or this much access to, as you said, TSSCI, such highly classified information, could be changed through legislation?
Well, I'm not sure it's legislation. I mean, we may have legislation as a result, but you can't legislate common sense. I mean, this was really the responsibility of the military, and it was just not a responsible way to handle this material. It's important also to realize this young man apparently, was not an intelligence analyst or a member of the intelligence community. He was a technician running the network. So the question is, can you keep the network running without having access to the content on the network, or are there ways to secure it? And that's really, it's sort of a mechanical problem in terms of how this information is shared. There's one other interesting aspect of this, Poppy. If you go back to September 11th, one of the problems that was identified was not that information wasn't shared across the United States government about the impending possibility of September 11th. So there was a lot more sharing going on. Well, okay, now it looks like in this case, it was too much.
That's
but
right.
Again, this young man shouldn't have had access to these documents.
So you obviously have a lot of questions. We heard the same thing echoed from Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand on CNN Sunday morning saying, why were these documents lying around? Why did this person have access to them? What was the custody? A lot of questions you both have for the Biden administration, for the Pentagon. So I wonder, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, are you planning a hearing to question Defense Department officials directly on all of that?
Yes, absolutely. But that's going to begin this afternoon. We're having a classified briefing this afternoon with members from the Pentagon and the intelligence community. So that's an important part.
Publicly?
Why is this so important, Poppy? Well, that remains to be seen. I think we need to determine what can be public. I think we should have a public hearing. But again, here's the real danger here. The term is sources and methods. The information that's become public is bad in many ways. It's not a good thing to have this out in the public and among our adversaries. But the other problem is it can compromise how we got the information. In other words, if we learn something, they can take the fact that we know and reverse engineer and say, oh, here's how they got that. And that can can compromise people's lives. It can also certainly compromise our ability to obtain critical information in the future.
Are you saying you believe this leak may have put American lives at risk?
I think that's entirely possible. As I say, if the people, our adversaries, look at this information and they say, well, how did they get this? And then they trace it back. I think that's one of the possibilities. That's why there's sort of two levels of problems here. One is the content itself, but the second is compromise of what's called sources and methods, which can put lives at risk.
Also leading to a rare rebuke from the spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General about how this spying on him, not surprised by the spying, but that calling it malfeasance or incompetence that allowed private conversations to be distorted and become public. You agree with that?
Yes, I do. And again, one of the problems is we don't know what this, assuming this young man did this, we don't know what he chose and how he decided what to release. And here's another problem. How did this fellow get a security clearance? He had to have some level of security clearance. The question then is, we've done a lot of work on security clearances. The question is, should this have been, his proclivity to do this, should it have been picked up? And that's really hard to determine. If he was just showing off for his buddies, which is what it looks like, I don't know that any kind of security clearance process would have picked that up. Usually they look for things like financial compromise, other ways you can be compromised.
Senator Angus King, thank you for that. As you said, you cannot legislate common sense. Please come back and let us know what you can after you have this briefing. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Poppy.
Thank you. Don.